Assalamu alaikum. How are you? We are studying employment communication. Employment communication is a process, a very long process. You have to start from your career planning and then you go on to writing resume, writing applications. Then you think of interview. You are trying to understand what is this, and you are making preparation for your interviews. In the last lecture, we discussed typical sequence of interviews and then different types of interviews like group, like structured interviews and open-ended and so on. And towards the end of the lecture, we were discussing about the qualifications for the job. Your employer will judge you on the basis of these qualifications, and these qualifications are your academic preparation, what you are, graduate, postgraduate, whatever, any technical education, whatever it is. So academic preparation is number one. Then is your job related experience, if you have any experience. And the third thing is job related personality traits, your traits, what you have. These are the traits which the employer is looking for. So it's very important that you must emphasize on these traits. Obviously, when you are sending your resume along with your application, you're writing all about your academic qualification, what you have received so far. Similarly, on the resume sheet, you are writing about your job related experience, and similarly you are telling some of your personality traits in your resume as well as in your application. But here you are being also being judged on these things, but here you need to give these things in detail. The employer would like to know all these things in depth. So you maybe put up the question about your academic preparation that you have made, about your previous job related experience. Here you have to give more details. You have to go into details at this stage. The interviewer will be seeking someone with the flexibility to apply diverse skill in several areas. So you have to show that you possess that diverse personality. Be very honest. Whenever you feel that you have any problem, there is any gap in your qualification, there is one previous long employment and you don't have any solid reason for it to give to the employer, if any question is put up, you don't have to rely on any false statement or any lying. Be very fair, be very honest. Remember that whatever you tell about yourself to the employer, you have to tell very honestly, because nowadays hiring people is a very long process. It takes time. It involves in the overall cost of the communication. So employers are looking for people who can be relied upon. So they would like to know more about your background relating to all these three things: your academic qualifications, your job related experience and your personality trait. So it's very important that whatever you maintain in the resume, in the application, or whatever you maintain in during that interview, you must be very honest. you have to tell everything the way it is to the people who are interviewing you. So when you are preparing for your interview, you have to consider all these things. We'll be discussing some of the questions that are likely to be asked during an interview, so that you could have more practice of these questions. So after that, you have to think of another thing. Sometimes like sequence of interviews or like types of interviews, sometimes you have to undergo different tests, pre-employment test. For example, they are job skill related tests, they are psychological tests, and obviously not yet started in our country, but in foreign countries, in Europe, in America, sometime the employees, the would-be employees have to undergo drug test as well, though this practice is not, to my knowledge, is not made in our country, but in foreign countries this type of a test is also given to the people looking for job coming for the interview. So job related test, the basic purpose is to know more about you, more about your skills, more about your personality trait. They want to know the amount of motivation that you have, the managerial skills that you possess, the confidence that you have in you. So these tests are basically employed to know more about you. Similarly, the psychological tests are given to you to understand your confidence, the level of your stress, to which extent you can bear certain stress, because at job place you do have to undergo certain stresses, you do have to face certain situations, certain certain situation in which you have to make very witty decisions. So you are obviously come under stress. So they would like to know that to what extent you can bear these stresses. So they will give you certain psychological tests, and the basic purpose of these tests is to know the extent of your courage, your motivation, your ability to be in a stressful situation, because we have we have a very cutthroat competition in the market. So every employer would like to know that how we will behave in future situation. Preparing for the job, preparation is mandatory. I mean, you cannot avoid it. Remember that I've been stressing this point, that preparation gives you confidence, so it is mandatory. So prepare for the interview. How are you going to prepare for interview? Remember that whenever we go for an interview, we are a little anxious about it, a little nervous about it. So the more we are prepared, the more we are confident. The more we are prepared, the less we are nervous. So if we make good preparation, we will find ourselves less nervous, less anxious that what's going to happen during the interview. So prepare for the interview. Try to know any cultural differences. For example, if you are going for an interview in any foreign country, try to understand the differences that are there between your culture and their culture. You know that we've been studying all these things very minutely. What is culture? What are the cultural variables? National cultural variables, individual cultural variables. We've studied a lot of things. So the basic purpose is to prepare ourselves for all these things, or for all these unexpected situation. So whenever we are coming across such a situation, we should have all the knowledge about these things, so we could act positively in these situations. So when you are preparing for interview, as I just said, maybe you are a little nervous, anxious, don't worry, think of preparation, think about any cultural differences if there are, so you'll feel more confident. Beside all these things, to have solid sound preparation, you have to think of 6 things. For example, you have to learn about the organization, you have to think ahead about question, you have to bolster your confidence, you have to polish your interview style, you have to plan to look good, you have to be ready when you arrive. Number 1 is you have to learn about the organization. Don't you think that we are repeating this question? We have talked in detail about learning about the organization to which you are going to apply. But here, when you receive an interview call, obviously before receiving that interview call in the planning stage, you did gather a lot of information about that organization. But now it's time that you have received a call, an interview call, so you need to just brush off your knowledge about that organization. You have to think more in detail. So it's very important that here you give more time to the organization, knowing more about it. Today's companies expect serious candidates who demonstrate an understanding of the company's operations, its market, its strategic and tactical problems. So you will see that in an interview, you may be asked about the company. They would like to know whether you have studied the company. They would like to know whether you know about the company, when it was established, where it was established. These are very crucial questions. These answer to these questions do tell the interviewer that you are a serious candidate, and it demonstrates your skills, your job related skills. So never play down this concept of knowing more about the organization where you're going for an interview. You must know all about these things, and as we said, we can easily access this type of information from any website, and normally organization nowadays do have their website, so we can know about any organization. It's better to spend some time on knowing such answers to these type of question, instead of encountering an embarrassment during the interview when we are put up such a question about the establishment of the organization, about its operation, about its market, tactical and strategic problem, etc. So if we answer positively to these questions, we are sure to give a headline impact over the interviewer. The next thing to this, to learning about the organization, is think ahead. Think ahead is to think of the question. What are the questions you are likely to be asked during the interview? Planning ahead for the question that you may be asked during the interview will certainly help you and will make you more confident. So let's see that what type of question you may be asked during the interview. So there can be question like these: what are the toughest decisions you ever had to make? So it will tell them your strength. Why do you want to work for this organization? It will tell them your basic objective. Writing objective on your resume is not enough. You have to word your objective. It will tell them that how you are related to it. Your non-verbal cues will give the information to the interviewer that how you are related to your objective. So why should the organization employ you? It's very important question. So you have to give reason that how can you be more effective and useful to the organization. How can you benefit the organization? You don't have to talk about yourself, the benefits that you are going to have. You have to tell them the benefit the organization is going to have by employing you. So if the organization hired you, what changes would you make? You have to think over this question, the changes you would like to make, any change. You won't be able to answer these questions unless you have prepared well beforehand of these answers. So think hard, ask your friends, ask your teachers. I will be discussing mock interviews. They are very helpful. You just role play an interview situation. So you will see that how it can be helpful in making you more confident during your interview. So there can be more questions like this. Can you offer any good suggestion to the organization for the development of the organization? What are your greatest strengths and what are your greatest weaknesses? Remember that when you answer these questions, and if you are hiding, especially when you are talking about your greatest strengths, it's very easy, you can talk a lot. But when you are talking about your greatest weaknesses, if you try to hide facts, you are emitting certain non-verbal cues which are going to tell the interviewer that what actually you are thinking at that very moment. So never hesitate to give the correct answer to any question during the interview. Be very honest. Tell what is your weakness very honestly in your opinion, or maybe you tell that how other people look at you regarding this aspect. So similarly, you may be asked about your previous job. So tell about your previous job. Here you may be asked about your weaknesses in your education. Tell honestly what happened. So these are some of the questions which you may be asked. You may be asked that why you are going to join this organization. You may be asked about your weaknesses, about your strength, about anything that is giving the impression to the employer that you are the right person to be employed. So these thinking ahead will certainly help you in preparing for your interview. First was learn about your about the organization, and second is think ahead for the question that you may be asked during the interview. Next thing to it is to bolster your confidence. If you feel shy or self-conscious, remember that recruiters, that interviewers are also human beings. Sometimes it happens that we have some certain apprehensions about anything, maybe about any gap in the qualification, maybe about in the gap of employment, previous employment. Maybe we feel that we are not very well experienced, we lack experience for the job. There can be any reservation like these. Remember that the best thing to avoid these apprehension is to remove the source. Try to remove the source from your application and from your resume. Remember another very important point in this regard, and this can be very helpful even in your day-to-day life, and that is that you are much more conscious of your limitation than others. Just think what I have said. that you know more, you know yourself more than other know it. So sometime you think that you have some problem and other person may ask you about that problem. Maybe he doesn't know it, maybe he doesn't analyze it when he is going through the documents. So never lose your self confidence. Obviously in an interview the recruiter is expecting some sort of shyness or some nervousness, especially in the beginning. As I just said, they are also human beings. They have gone through the whole process themselves when they started their career. So never hesitate to think of all these things that you too have the same problem which they used to have when they started their career. Another thing, and the next thing to it, is polish your interview skills. As I just said, staging mock interview with your friends can be very helpful. I mean, these things sometimes seems very superfluous, some very unnecessary, but they can help us a lot. If you stage these false interviews with your friends, you become an interviewer and he becomes an interviewer, or it may be two people or it may be a group of people, and keeping all these questions that we discussed and doing more homework on the topic, you can think of more question. So you answer the question and the other person puts up the question, and this way you will gather more confidence and you will polish your style of interview. You will know that how to respond to a certain question. So these tasks, as I'm just telling you, are very important. Knowing the organization, thinking ahead of questions, bolstering your confidence and polishing your interview skills will certainly help you a lot when you are actually in an interview situation. So when you have made this practice, you will certainly improve your confidence, develop a certain balance, and improve certain good manners that are required during the interview. So after this, after polishing your interview skills, you have to plan to look good. I mean, it's the moment, you have to think of the moment when you are landing at the organization. What you are supposed to do. Dress conservatively. It's very important. Whenever you are going for interviews, don't use casual dress, use formal dress. Whatever is, it may be a pair of trousers, shirt and tie, or a suit. If you are going to wear a suit, remember that you must wear some dark color suit for your interview. Instead of wearing some light color suit, go in a dark color suit. So when you are planning to look good, think of a dark color suit. Be very well groomed and smile when appropriate. During the interview, you may be put up question. You have to answer these questions. So at certain times you feel that a smile can help your message get across, and it gives a sense of confidence to the recruiter that you are a confident person. So do these three things: dress conservatively, be well groomed, and smile when appropriate. This is another thing that you need to do for going to an interview. The last thing to this is, when you want your interview for a sure success, taking proof of your accomplishment is very necessary. Take all of your credentials, the documents, the experience letters, anything that you may be asked at the time of the interview. So always take these proofs of your accomplishment. Arrive on time. If you are on time, you will have enough time to muster up courage, to subdue or to overcome that nervousness that normally people have, especially people going for their first interview. I've seen that, and you can imagine that they are most of the time very nervous. And if you have to wait graciously. Sometimes there are more than one person, so in that case you may be asked to wait. You have to show patience. You don't know that you may be viewed by some camera. You know that normally people, the employer would like to know the amount of patience that the prospective employee may have. So be very positive about these things. Show that you are a cool person, you have patience. This will also tell that how you handle different situation. So remember that when you are in the interview, you have to present a memorable headline during your screening interview, and when you are in the next stage, the selecting stage, cover all your strengths during it. Tell the employer all about yourself, the strengths that you have. And when you are going for your final interview, you have to emphasize your personality, your personal trait that you possess. So these are the keys for success. These are the keys for getting an employment of your own liking. Now, whatever we have just been discussing, especially these 6 points, starting from learning about the organization and then to this arriving on time, etc. These all tasks are to be done before going into the practical interview. Now, let's suppose what happens when you are in the room before the interview. Your interview starts. I told you previously, probably in the last lecture, that the first few seconds are very important. Psychologists say that 50% of the interview's decision is made within the first 30 to 60 seconds. So, as we all know, first impression is very important. So, the way you walk into the interview, the way you take your seat, the way you look at the people, the way you are dressed up, the way you answer the first question will determine your future with the organization, whether you are going to be employed or not. Then another 25% of the interview is made within the 15 minutes. So next 15 minutes, maybe you are not given 15 minutes. So we can say that in the middle, whatever the time limit is, in the middle, the middle point is for 25% of the interview. So 50% in the first 30 to 60 seconds, and then 25% in the mid, and then the rest of the 25 goes toward the end. If you have a bad start, you can expect the future of your interview, the result of your interview. But if you have started off very confidently, you are very happy, it means that you are going to win a job. Here during this period, from the moment you get into the room and the moment you get out of the room, this session normally is taken as a question and answer session. Here the employer would like to dig out the information that will help him. So you need to tailor your answers very carefully. Be very careful when you answer the question, because every answer of yours will tell him more about you. So tailor your answers to the questions of the employer very carefully. Remember that you're listening to the question during this stage when you are answering the question will also tell the employer about you. The way you listen, your listening skills will be very helpful in understanding the question. So pay attention to it. If you have failed to understand any or listen to any words, you can very confidently ask. So instead of answering incorrectly, or instead of answering any question which was in your opinion can give very bad impression, so pay attention to both verbal and non-verbal messages, because here you are confused, no doubt, to some extent. But as we said that if you have prepare all these things, you will be very confident. You will be able to know the non-verbal cues as well. So pay attention to the verbal as well as non-verbal cues. Like opening the end of the interview, as I just said, is also very important. You need to evaluate how well you have done. You need to correct any misconception the interview might have. Here you still have time. I mean, if you think that there is some misconception, you need to make it correct. So conclude very gracefully. You know that when the interviewer is putting up you questions, you know that the way the stresses of the question will tell you that when he is to continue the interview and when he is to conclude the interview. So whenever you feel that the interviewer has changed the topic, he has changed his sitting posture, or his non-verbal non-verbal cues are changing, so be prepared that the interview is going to finish. So now you too have to make yourself ready for a departure. You have to leave the chair and get out of the room. But unless you feel it and unless the gentleman thanks you properly, you have to be on your seat. Sometime you may be asked to tell your salary. Be very realistic. We have talked a lot about this issue. You do tell about your salary expectations and the benefits that you would like, but be very diplomatic in your negotiations. You can understand the flexibility of the employer, that when he is ready to negotiate or when he is not. So this thing depends on your understanding whether the employer is flexible in negotiation or not. So if you feel that he is not flexible in negotiation, or simply he just want to know your opinion about your expected salary, you must tell it, but you must avoid negotiation in that case. So be very careful in this regard. Whenever you are negotiating, you have to think reasonably. You don't have to cross limits. After you have got out of the interview and reach home, it's better that you take down all the notes of the interview. Take down the questions that you were asked and take down the answer that you gave. Especially this practice is very useful for people who are just starting off their career, who are just new. One interview will help them in becoming more confident in other interview. So it will improve their understanding of this whole employment communication process and give them confidence. So when you reach home, prepare a record of the interview. Don't mind that this is the second or third interview. Keep writing down the notes of every interview that you give. This will certainly help you a lot. Remember that all these things, all these exercises that you do for seeking a job will help you a lot in your future. They will certainly polish your faculties, polish your skills. You'll become a better person. This is just like preparing for any examination. If you know that if you make well preparation for an examination, you get good results in that examination. Similarly, if you make good preparation during this process, you will learn a lot, and this learning will help you in the days to come. So far we've been discussing different aspects of this employment communication, this process that start from career planning, then writing resume, then writing application, then understanding the process of interview, preparing for interview, and then sitting in the interview. So we have discussed all these points. To some extent we can say in detail, and to some extent we can say that we have we have touched some of the topic briefly, but I think that very comprehensively we now understand this this employment process. We can discuss different aspect of this package. Now we turn to the last step of this package, and that is writing thank you letters, writing job acceptance letter, yes, sometime rejecting job offers. In some cases, I tell you one thing, when we are discussing these things, some of the things are very much there in our society. These things are being done by our people, but some are not being done by too many people. They are just in a very initial stage. But surely the way we are making progress, I'm sure that sooner we'll be having all these situation within our context, within our culture, and we'll be dealing with these things. So that's why we've discussed all the issues that are at present in our in our country, and that might come into this context after some years. So after the interview, you write thank you letters. Write a thank you letter within 2 days of the interview, keeping it to one page. You have to thank the interviewer. In some cases you can simply thank the interviewer by phone, or you can simply send a email. So in the opening, express your thanks and identify the job and the time and place of the interview. Use the middle section for supporting details. Express your enthusiasm about about joining the organization. So this is how you are going to write this letter. Don't forget to include the position that you have applied for. So this is going to be your thank you letter. Here you have one opportunity. If something untoward happened, something that you did not like, you have left some negative impression, here is another one try to repair that negative impression. So writing these letters can be helpful in this case. You can also write an inquiry letter, as we discussed previously, to know about the result of the interview. Even if 3 months have elapsed, you still can write a letter of inquiry asking the organization about their decision, and this letter will also tell them that you are still out of job or you are still looking for the opportunity. So writing letter can be very helpful, inquiry letter can be very helpful. The plan of this letter is again the direct request plan, main idea in the beginning, in the opening, then necessary details, and ending with a specific request. Sometime you also write request for a time extension. We discuss about this, about the planning of such a letter. Now come to the end of this communication. Last letter is to accepting a job offer. So after an interview, you have now received a letter which has offered you a job. So you must send this message within 5 days of receiving the offer. When you receive such an offer, write back within 5 days. State clearly that you accept the offer, identify the job you are accepting, and indicate vital details. Conclude with a statement that you look forward to reporting for work. So this should be your letter accepting a job offer. Obviously it will be a direct request letter starting with a main idea. So as I just said, stating that you have accepted the offer and identifying the job that you have accepted. Sometime, as I just said, we have to write letters rejecting job offers. You might have got a better job, or we are looking for some other options. So you were just testing your skills, your abilities of giving interview, and you don't need a job at present, or there is any other thing. So in that case, you are going to write letters rejecting job offer. So whenever you are writing letters rejecting job offer, open rejection warmly. Obviously you have to do it. Explain why you are refusing the offer and express your appreciation, and end on a sincere positive tone. So this is how you are going to write letter. So we have discussed a very long topic, that is employment communication. As I told you earlier, this employment communication is a process that starts from your career planning and ends with your writing job acceptance letter. And in between these two things, you write a lot of things. You do a lot of exercise. Remember that during this whole process or period, what you are needed to do is you have to know more about yourself. You have to know more about the organization. How you can know about the organization, we have discussed in detail. There are certain means to know about the organization. First of all, you have to know what you are looking for. You have to determine your objective. Determining objective is very important. We started this lecture from this aspect, that how you should determine your objective, that what you want to do in your life. So you start from determining your objective, and then you start looking for your search that can fulfill your objectives. So we have discussed a lot of things in this topic. As I just said, knowing the organization, knowing yourself, you know about your qualification, you know about your skills, that if there are any. You have learned in this topic that when you are an experienced person, how you can write your resume in a better manner, and when you are just starting a career, how you can write your resume in a better manner. So you have learned to write resume, you have learned to write job applications and the way they should be written. If you look at this whole topic, this whole topics draws your attention toward very minute things, very minute details. So they basically tell you that how can you know about yourself, how can you know about the organizations that you are going to apply. They tell you what is an interview, what type of interviews are there, and what likely stages of the interviews are there. What are the questions that you may be asked, how you can best answer these questions. So what you have to say during the interview, which part of the interview is important, is it the beginning or the middle or the end. How you have to look at the non-verbal cues of the interviewer or the recruiter. How you can avoid your nervousness and many other things. So I'm sure that after having all these lectures and going through the details about this topic, you must feel confident about this aspect of communication like the others. We have in minute details discussed this topic. So from now on you must be well versed with different aspect of this employment communication. We have very few lectures now. Today is 37th lecture, and normally mostly 8 lectures are left now. We have 2-3 topics more. Although business communication is a very vast subject, we can discuss anything in it that is related to communication, orally or in writing, but we have to be specific. We have to take care of some limits. So I'll be discussing 2-3 more topics like thesis, as in every at the end of any qualification, any semester, you have to write thesis. So we will be looking at how to write thesis. But before we discuss this, one very important aspect still remains, and that is presentation. So in the next lecture we will be discussing presentation. What is presentation? It's a very important topic. Like whenever I talk about any topic, I say it's very important, and I really mean it, because all the topics in communication, in this business communication, are very important. They can make us a winner or a loser. Being confident of knowing these topics can certainly make us a winner. So in the next lecture we'll be discussing inshallah what is presentation, different aspects of presentation, how we can become good presenter. And you know that at the workplace you need to be a good presenter. So we are finished with our today's topic, and we'll be having this topic in the next. So, until then, Khuda Hafiz.